good evening to everyone. My name is Dave Vidito, and I'm the Assistant Vice President of Alumni Relations at John Carroll University and a member of the JCU class of 2000. Thank you for joining us for this latest installment of the Alumni Continuing Education Series, or A.C.E.S for short. A.C.E.S was established in the spring of 2013 by the Office of Alumni Relations in the spirit of lifelong learning. The program offers enrichment opportunities for alumni and friends through the expertise of members of the JCU administration, faculty, and alumni community. Over the past year, we have heard from experts on ethics and leadership, the political and economic impact of COVID-19, racial equity and social justice, disruptive technology, Ignatian spirituality, space exploration, youth sports, the war in Ukraine, and the coffee industry, just to name a few. Tonight, we are delighted to be joined by an impressive panel to discuss the past, present, and future of the Ohio and Erie Canal. Before I draw in our moderator, I'd like to encourage all of our viewers, if you have any questions whatsoever, even throughout the program, submit those directly to me in a direct message in the chat feature, and I will pose as many questions as possible in the Q&A portion at the end. It is now my pleasure to invite in our moderator for the evening, a fellow John Carroll alumnus and friend, Mike Hardy. Mike is a member of the John Carroll University class of 1969, graduating with a Bachelor of Arts degree in history. He continued his education, receiving a Juris Doctorate from the University of Michigan Law School in 1972, and he would go on to become partner at Thomas Hein from 1984 to 2018. Mike has been generous with his time to numerous organizations with which he volunteers. He served as a board member for the Conservancy for the Cuyahoga Valley National Park from 2012 to 2018, and currently serves as chair of the Ohio and Erie Canalway Association. He also served on John Carroll's board of directors from 2009 to 2018. And let me just say this about Mike, two things about Mike before we draw him in. Mike is, my father-in-law is on this meeting, and my wife's family is from Pinckney, Michigan. So big Michigan fans. So Mike and I share this common bond of being Wolverines football fans. So we have that in common, which is rare down here in Ohio. But also Mike, from the start, has been one of the biggest supporters of these programs in the alumni office. All of these enrichment programs, the Alumni Continuing Ed series, the Alumni Author series. Mike is on most of those, following along, learning with our alums, and supporting us. So Mike, we thank you for that. And with that, I'd like to introduce Mike Hardy to take things over and moderate the panel. Mike?
Thank you, Dave, and welcome everybody. You're not here to listen to me, you're here to listen to the three experts that I work with the Ohio and Erie Canalway Association. I'll just give one anecdotal study to tell you how I got involved with this organization. In 1988, I was part of a group of lawyers that assisted some buyers of the American Steel and Wire Works in Cuyahoga Falls, in Cuyahoga Heights, Ohio, on East 49th and Grant Avenue. And that particular plant historically used water from the Ohio and Erie Canal for industrial cooling water. They used the water from the canal in lieu of river water, Cuyahoga River water. So one of the projects we had to do right from the very beginning was negotiate a lease of the canal from Route 82, what was then called the Brecksville Dam, all the way down to Grant Avenue for feeding of the canal, and that included some dredging and restoration. And the lease, of course, was with the state of Ohio. The client in that group, in that transaction, saw the potential of the towpath, and he worked with Vern Hartenberg of the Cuyahoga Metro Parks and John Debo of the Cuyahoga Valley National, what was then recreation area, and their counterpart in Summit County to begin discussions of putting together, of maximizing the towpath and making it a recreational asset. And years later, it has become a wonderful asset of Northeast Ohio. And in fact, it's little known or appreciated how much the National Heritage Area is an asset of this area and what it's done for its partners and this area. And with that, I am going to call on Dan Rice and Mira Cardenas to introduce the Ohio and Erie Canalway National Heritage Area, a brief historical overview, and then we'll get into the national park after that. Thank you. Dan and Mira.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for such a wonderful turnout and welcome from the John Carroll alumni. I'm just going to confirm that Dan is able to open his mic and just say hello before we jump into the video, Dan. We had a few technical issues before we all got connected here. So, and Dan is doing the very important job of helping his daughter become an alumni to a university. So they are on a college tour, and I think he's joining us from Chicago tonight. So, but I have not heard him unmute. So, what we wanted to start off with to share with you all is that the Ohio and Erie Canalway as a National Heritage Area has been around for 25 years. So we were designated in 1996. I am the newest member of the team who joined the National Heritage Area just before COVID started, actually. Oh, Dan, I think that's you. Did you just say hello and we'll confirm that's you? Say hello, we'll confirm that's you. Say hello, we'll confirm that's you. Say hello, we'll confirm that's you.
Hello, hello.
I think we have some.
Okay, I just put Dan on mute till we get his mic situated. So go ahead, Mira.
Okay, I just wanted to try to confirm that we were going to be able to have him. So anyway, the 25th anniversary actually happened during COVID, and you know the challenges that we all have had in marking special events during COVID. So that designation, it comes from a congressional designation. So obviously the Canalway and the idea of the Canalway and the national park are much older. And although during that year, we recognized that with all the uncertainty, we couldn't really plan the kind of event we wanted. So we created this video. And we're gonna share that with you. I really hope you can enjoy, Dave's gonna play it for you. I hope you can enjoy some of the visuals and perhaps hear some of it. I know that we had, again, technical difficulties with some of the audio. Really, the intent was to share with you everything that we have to celebrate with the Canal anniversary. So I'm going to mute until Dave is done playing.
Okay.
Celebrate 25 years of your Ohio and Erie Canalway National Heritage Area. This is your place to experience trails, trains, and scenic byways. Explore canal towns, neighborhoods, industrial landscapes, green spaces, working rivers, and our Great Lake. Here, you can connect the past, the present, and our promising futures. This is the Ohio and Erie Canalway National Heritage Area. And for 25 years, we have worked together to connect our communities from the shores of Lake Erie, along the 101-mile Towpath Trail, through the valley that inspired the nation's industrial innovation, and the market towns that fueled the growth of the nation. Thank you for 25 years of collaboration, celebration, and community. In this National Heritage Area, your Ohio and Erie Canalway.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I know you all couldn't hear that very well, but I did put in the chat a link to that video, and I hope you'll take another look at it sometime in the near future. What we really wanted to get across is over those 25 years, we've connected so many communities, whether it's on the towpath, on the scenic byway, through our rivers, and that this is really your national heritage area. And we hope not only that you enjoy it, but also that you share it with others. And now we're going to talk a little bit more about what a national heritage area is, and the way that might be a little bit different than some other entities that you might be used to dealing with. Dan, can we check your audio?
Does that sound a little bit better?
That does, yes.
Yes.
Okay.
And
So if it's okay, Dave, I'll just I'll stay off the video because sometimes that actually works a little bit better. If that's okay with you, just briefly.
Sounds good. You sound great. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that because I didn't sound very good before. So thank you. And as Mira said, so first of all, again, thank you very much for the invitation to join you this evening. We're really honored to be able to be with you, and especially with our chairman, Mike Hardy, obviously alumni of John Carroll. And Mike has just played a tremendous role with the development of the Ohio and Erie Canalway and the Topaz Trail. And much of our success with our organization is really due to Mike's tremendous leadership. So thank you so much, Mike. So what I wanted to do is just give you a little bit of background regarding national heritage areas and their relationship to the National Park Service. And so the slide you see right up there in front of you is actually a beautiful shot of the Beaver Marsh, or right in the heart of the Cuyahoga Valley National Park. And in essence, what a national heritage area is it exports the National Park Service mission of resource conservation outside the boundaries of a traditional park service unit. And in 1996, Congress said they want us to go out there and conserve natural areas, preserve historic buildings, and develop trails. But there were two catches when they told us that. One, they're not going to give us all the money. And two, we don't have any authorities. So they in essence said, good luck, go out and do those great things. And really through the incredible leadership of our partners, at that time it was Congressman Ralph Regula, and all of our elected officials throughout Cuyahoga, Summit, Stark, and Tuscarawas counties, we've been able to achieve some tremendous progress along the Ohio and Erie Canalway. We can go to the next slide if you want to, Mira. So the Ohio and Erie Canalway follows the historic route of the Ohio and Erie Canal. And at one time, Ohio had over 1,000 miles of canal lands. It actually led the nation in the number of miles of canal lands. And it literally transformed Ohio from a rural, isolated frontier settlement to the third most populous state in the nation. However, by about the 1860s, when you had the railroads come along, the canals kind of basically went out of business, if you will. They kind of lingered a little bit into the early 1900s. And so it was really in the 1960s when Congressman Ralph Regula had this dream and idea of maybe preserving and saving the Ohio and Erie Canal for future generations. He was inspired in that work by Congressman John Seiberling, and together they worked to create the Cuyahoga Valley National Park. 33,000 acre jewel right here in Northeast Ohio, connecting our urban areas, which Jenny Vassarelli is going to talk about in a few minutes here. And so the Ohio and Erie Canalway National Heritage Area includes the Cuyahoga Valley National Park. We're one of the few national heritage areas across the country that actually has a national park within its boundaries. And we think that's a huge asset to us to have that resource right within our boundaries. And then the heritage area extends all the way from the lakefront and Lake Erie, all the way down to Tuscarawas County in the city of New Philadelphia, a distance of 110 miles. And as I mentioned previously, our goals here are to preserve historic buildings, conserve natural areas, promote resource conservation, with really the goal of creating two outcomes, and that is promoting stewardship and stimulating community and economic development. Because remember what I said a few minutes ago about how the model works is we get a little bit of funding from the federal government, but most of our funding comes from our local partners, our county governments, our cities, our corporations, our foundations. And really it reinforces what I said a few minutes ago. That's why volunteers and private contributions make up a significant part of our operating dollars, as well as developing the resources along the Ohio and Erie Canalway. And so this slide really kind of illustrates that. We need our park agencies, our planning agencies, units of government, elected officials, foundations, corporations, churches, universities. I've often said, if you have a pulse in Northeast Ohio, we want to talk to you, because we believe that everybody has a stake in what we do. And really our two outcomes here are to promote community and economic development and cultivate new stewards and improve the quality of life for the residents of Northeast Ohio. And here's just a kind of a sampling of our various partners. We are so blessed and fortunate to have over 200 public-private partnerships. And you might say, well, how do you do that? How do you get everybody to get all on the same page? Well, fortunately, many of you folks probably here this evening are active users of the Towpath Trail. Maybe you walk or you bicycle, or you've been to some of the museums or visitor centers. And we really believe that by having everybody be a part of this, we're able to leverage additional private resources that we would not normally have an opportunity to be able to do. And so all the partners that you see there, whether it's the Convention and Visitors Bureau, the foundations, the hospitals, our park agencies, we believe everybody benefits from what we're trying to do along the Ohio and Erie Canalway. And what we found over the years is our corporate partners like Goodyear, PPG, or our banks, they actually use our materials to actually recruit their associates to come live in Northeast Ohio. So not only is it just good for our health and wellness, not only good for our recreation, it really is good for our bottom line for the community and economic development. And we've actually measured that. On an annual basis, the Ohio and Erie Canalway stimulates over $409 million in economic impact. It supports 3,200 jobs and generates about $39 million in tax revenue. And here is a kind of a slide that illustrates the boundaries of the National Heritage Area, where we're so blessed and fortunate to have 3 linkages. So we have the multi-use recreational trail, the hiking and bicycling and equestrian trail. We have a scenic byway that has been designated by the state of Ohio as well as the federal government that goes 110 miles. And then we're very blessed and fortunate to have a scenic railroad that runs within the boundaries of Cuyahoga Valley National Park. So I'm going to kick it back to Mira, who's going to talk about a lot of the new developments that are happening on the lakefront in Cuyahoga County. Oops, I guess I had that out of order. I apologize. It looks like I'm going to be.
That's okay.
Yeah, Jenny.
We're going to see how this all ties into the national park first, and then we'll do that.
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you. And, as Dan mentioned, the Ohio and Erie Canalway is a national heritage area that has a national park kind of embedded within it. So I'm going to kind of share an overview of the park and show how that connection with the national heritage area really benefits the park and vice versa. I'm also doing this with a little bit of a lens of thinking of all of you as potential visitors to the park. So I'll give a little bit of a sense of how to visit the park as well. So next slide. So just a few things, like the heritage area, we're also federal, Congress, national units of the National Park Service are either established by Congress or by the President of the United States through an executive order. In this case, we were established by an act of Congress. The same congressmen who were involved in creating the heritage area also were involved in creating the park. And really, I think the heritage area extended their work and made it fully come to life. So the legislation that created us in 1974 was co-sponsored by John Seiberling and Ralph Regula. And we became a park on paper at that point in time. Next slide. You know, you can look by seeing in 1974, we're coming up on our 50th anniversary. Over the last 50 years, we've continued to develop and evolve. One of the big things that happened is our name changed in 2000. We were established as a national recreation area. We became a national park in 2000. That actually happened through a House appropriations bill. So a simple act of Congress. And it didn't change that much in terms of how we're managed or how we're funded, but it does change the public perception of this place. And it really elevated us into a place with national attention. And we're getting more and more out of town national visitors and play a role in a tourism economy. Next slide. Our boundaries were set by Congress, and our boundaries include 33,000 acres, which in a metropolitan area like we are is a significant amount of land. You can stay on the next slide, Mira, that was fine. I wanted to share our park purpose because I just find it really interesting, and it really shares what is important about Cuyahoga Valley National Park. So this park purpose is in our legislation, and when we're making decisions about what we should be doing, we go and look at this park purpose. It looks like a lot of words, but it's very interesting. So we're here to preserve and protect for public use and enjoyment. That means you come here and enjoy the park. We're here for a really wide variety to protect and help enjoyment of a wide variety of resources, summarized as the historic, scenic, natural, and recreational values of the Cuyahoga River and the adjacent lands of the Cuyahoga Valley. Next slide. And we're for the purpose of providing for the maintenance of needed recreational open space necessary to the urban environment. And I also love the fact that our legislation says that we're here to provide for recreation and education. Based on our focus on the heritage area, I really wanted to call attention to the language of our connection to the urban environment. The thing that the heritage area does is physically connect us to the urban spaces, into the metropolitan community of Northeast Ohio. And it's those connections that help people journey through the park into the heritage area and help people really understand the deep community connections of this national park. Next slide. Just a few highlights about the park. The only named piece, the only named resource in the park in our enabling legislation is the Cuyahoga River. So that is the foundation. It's a very small river, but has a wonderful environmental history. I use the word wonderful because I think it's just a lovely icon of something that had really a high amount of environmental degradation in the past. And so it's kind of an icon of environmental distress. And today it's a recreational river. So that change, that renewal is really significant. Next slide. We have a really diverse collection of natural and historic resources. This slide and the next one just give you an inventory of the large amount of resources that we protect. Over 100 or 400 historic buildings, over 1,600 wetlands, just gives you a sense of the diversity. Next slide. How people experience the park. Trail is a big thing. And as Dan mentioned, the Towpath Trail is kind of the anchor of the heritage area. It is also the anchor of the park. It runs north-south through the valley, up into Cleveland, down into Akron. Other trails include the water trail. The Cuyahoga River is now a state water trail. We have equestrian trails. We have mountain bike trails, lots of really wonderful hiking trails. Next slide. Also really important for experiencing the park is Cuyahoga Valley Scenic Railroad. You can take an excursion and have the windshield tour of the park. You can go to special events. You can load your bike onto the train for one-way travel and come back by train. And again, the train is an anchor of both the heritage area and the national park. Next slide. The Scenic Byway, the Ohio and Erie Canalway Byway, that provides the driving tour of both the national park and the heritage area. So the two really, again, go hand in glove. Next slide. One other thing that's really important to this part is partnerships. The Canalway is one of those partners. We also have operating partners that operate things like Happy Days Lodge. Mike Hardy was on the board of the organization that runs that. That's the Conservancy for Cuyahoga Valley National Park. There's also other landowners within the boundaries of the park that provide visitor opportunities, Blossom Music Center, Hale Farm and Village, Boston Mill Ski Area. These are some of the iconic recreational destinations in the region. Not everyone realizes it's in the boundaries of the park. One of the things that we like to do, next slide please, is just point people in the direction of Boston Mill Visitor Center. It's our new visitor center that opened in 2019. When you want to visit the park, it's the place to start your visit and get help from rangers and volunteers to help you plan your visit. So if you're not sure what to do, start here and we can help you figure out where to go from there. One other place that's really related to the story of the canal is Canal Exploration Center. It's located in Valley View, open Wednesday through Sunday, and it really helps people learn the history of canal heritage. So I'm going to stop there and we'll switch to sharing some of the current happenings going on in the heritage area.
So I'm flipping over the presentation and I'll be back with you guys in just 1 second, making sure I share the right window here.
While we're doing that, this is Mike. There are Towpath companion books, as well as information on websites that can help you plan your visits to the anywhere in the national park, as well as within the National Heritage Area. The website for the Ohio and Erie Canalway Association is a .org site, and there is a plan your visit feature. There is also in the park, and you can plot trails, partner agencies to visit, find nearby housing and places to eat and things like that. And Mira, I'll send it back to you.
All right. Thank you very much for that, Mike. So I hope that we've given you a little bit of an overview of kind of like the parameters that we operate under, and maybe help to understand a little bit how the National Heritage Area and the National Park are connected, and hopefully the projects that we start to share will make that connection even more clear. All of us work in, so in a little bit, you can probably see that we're somewhat sectioned by geography. So I mainly focus with Canalway partners in Cuyahoga County. And we all have two distinct buckets of programming that we work under. First, we have projects. We have those physical things that we build. And then we have the programs, which is how we connect people to those physical projects. Because like Jenny said, this is for the public. This isn't something that we're building for ourselves or our immediate family. Like, this is for the public. That's the type of work that we do. So I thought I'd start here with the project that's been mentioned several times, and that's the Towpath Trail. And that's the project that I think the National Park and the National Heritage Area are most known for. And this is really, a generational project that actually isn't quite done yet. We've come a long way, and just last year made a huge leap forward in Cuyahoga County. And you can see here on the right, these are the connections that were made from Harvard Road heading north. This is some board members and community members, and you can see the county CEO, you can see Jenny in there, cutting the ribbon at the final stage of the towpath to be completed last year. Dan alluded to how many people and partnerships it takes to make this stuff happen. Completing the Topaz Trail in Cuyahoga County alone, that's and really just north of Harvard Road, was a $56 million project. And that was over nearly a dozen years of construction. So you had not only the National Heritage Area working on it, and the National Park working on it, but you had NOACA providing funding. It's the largest funding that they've ever given out for a transportation project over time. You had the city, the county, and Cleveland Metro Parks, and everybody continues to have a role in that moving forward. And I was leading a bike ride the other day and was pointing out to somebody that this section of the trail just opened last year, and they were kind of having trouble wrapping their head around that because so many people worked for so long, but now that it's there, it seems inevitable. It seems like it's just a natural part of the landscape, and that's really kind of fun to watch people make connections to it. So that kind of flips. I'm going to flip back and forth between a project and a program. So one of the programs, as Mike was talking about, that we do to connect people to the Towpath Trail is an event called Cycle Canalway, which is going on all this month. So we've created a bunch of maps that tell you mainly between between Canal Basin Park and the National Park, how to get on the Towpath Trail, how to experience it. We curate those journeys. You can also walk them. You don't have to ride them, but it gives you some great, really targeted maps in order to connect to those. This was a program that we used to do pre-COVID, and we would only have about 80 people participate in that program during any given year. When we flipped it to providing these maps during COVID, we had over 1,000 participants. So I think it's really interesting how we found ways to connect with people over time. And that means reaching different audiences through different types of programming. This year, we created a Towpath Trail Lantern Parade, encouraging people to make lanterns out of recycled material and just come out and do a mile-long walk with us. It was a freezing cold night, but it was beautiful. So this is kind of what our vision was at the top, and this is what happened at the bottom, where people made really fantastic lanterns. I'm going to talk a little bit now about the overview of Canal Basin Park, which is really our next big project in Cuyahoga County coming online and having some activity behind it. This is the northern gateway of the entire Towpath Trail. You can see that yellow line is where the Towpath Trail comes into that. If any of you have, maybe visited the flats in the past, it's looking much different today. This is under you can see the Cuyahoga River, well, on both sides of the peninsula here, and those parking lots that used to be under there. And imagine taking this gorgeous journey and either ending or starting your journey there. That didn't quite define what we wanted to do. So this is very much a project in process. I'm going to share with you some of the before and afters. And frankly, these before and afters were taken last year. So you can see already the tremendous impact that the Towpath Trail coming into downtown Cleveland really at this point has had on the area. We all sort of joke, John Debo has a joke that he frequently tells about how people were on the Towpath Trail right behind the bulldozers as the first miles were going into the national park. And that is, I think, true up and down the entire corridor. This is a little bit of a sense of what the Towpath Trail is going to look like. This parking lot will serve as a trailhead. This trailhead will open by the end of the month. So that is very exciting that now you have a great landing place to start and end your journey. But that's not the entirety of what's going to happen at Canal Basin. This is really developing into a regional park and a regional resource and an extension of downtown, frankly. So you can see here how we're able to connect the Topaz Trail all the way to the river here in Cuyahoga County and then in the city of Cleveland. And then you can see how we're taking out some roads, we're uniting some green space. Ultimately, this is going to be a 20-acre green space immediately adjacent to downtown. And as I said, that trailhead is opening at the end of the month, and we're really excited that the state has just provided some funding to start to make some of these plans a reality. Two last projects I'm going to share with you real quick. We have an annual river sweep cleanup of the Cuyahoga Valley in Cuyahoga County. This year we had nearly 1,000 volunteers come out. And as Dan talked about, you know, we get a lot of our support from volunteers. The reason we were able to build the Towpath Trail is because volunteers made it possible for people to see the vision. And then coming up in 10 days, we have a celebration of the river from Hart Crane Park on June 25th. And from there, I'm going to let Jenny talk about some of the things that are going on in the national park.
Yeah, thank you. We are, as we're coming up on 50 years old, we're doing facility projects that are really renewing our facilities and getting them prepared for the next 50 years. The Park Service was really fortunate to get some major funding through Congress, and it was really Ohio politicians, especially Senator Portman, who helped make it happen. That's really helping the Park Service address what we call our deferred maintenance, which is we haven't kept up on keeping facilities in good condition. Things get in worse condition. So this real influx of money is really going to improve conditions. In addition, the bipartisan infrastructure law is also bringing federal funds for major construction in parks. Coming with this, I have to say, is a little bit of pardon our dust. So I'm going to highlight the project going on right now that's making both some of the biggest improvements and some of the biggest headaches right now. So Brandywine Falls is a beautiful waterfall. It's one of our top destinations for people wanting to enjoy scenery in the park. Because it's a big destination, visitor facilities are really important. We had aging restrooms that did not have water. Those restrooms are getting replaced and a water line is being brought to Brandywine Falls. So that means we'll have flush toilets, we'll have running water. It's a really big improvement. There's a trail, a bicycle trail that connects to Brandywine Falls. It's closed right now because of the water line being run. In addition, the county is replacing a road bridge right next to the trailhead access, which makes the entrance drive too small to drive in and out of. So Brandywine Falls is closed right now. NPS.gov is our website. Park alerts are always there to know what's open and closed. And unfortunately, and fortunately, we're going to be getting these improvements that will get in the way of visitation for a while. And I like to put it through the lens of what to expect as a visitor, because I think it really helps to know where to go and not to go based on construction. You know, a big part of Cuyahoga Valley National Park story has really been about restoration. We were not a pristine area that we set aside and suddenly you had a national park. We were a highly degraded landscape. I shared the story of the river. The story of the river was also the story of the land. There was strip mining, there was open pit mining, there was dumping, there was major industry that took place in the valley. And we are turning it into a national park through ongoing restoration activities. These photos represent 3 that have taken place this year. In the upper right-hand corner is a spot where we demolished some buildings that had existed in the valley. You know, that's a little bit of a challenging story because this was a valley that was lived in. In the land acquisition, the Park Service did acquire people's homes, and we're still going through a multi-decade process of restoring some and removing others to expand the open space in the valley. So we did do some demolition this year. We do a lot of tree planting. The reason we do tree planting is because forested cover was the national, the forested cover was really the natural conditions, and that is what best protects the quality of the watershed. And then we're doing a lot of improving the hydrology of the valley. This particular image is restoration of Stanford Run, which is a stream that runs into the Cuyahoga River. We're getting it back on a natural course. The Brecksville Dam, which I don't have in here, but I see people asking about in the chat, was a dam. There were actually 2 dams there. The first one was built to push water into the Ohio and Erie Canal, so it's connected to this story. The second one was built to continue to bring water into the canal so it could be used for American Steel and Wire, which is the company that Mike mentioned early on. Anyway, both of those dams were removed in the last year, and we're in the process of installing a pump to continue to allow water in the the National Historic Landmark section of the canal. So just really, that's one type of project. And then as the habitat values improve, another thing we are working on is the reintroduction of native species, especially with a focus on the Cuyahoga River. The image on the lower left is, on the lower right, is part of a project this year to test whether mussels, freshwater mussels, can survive in the river. We have some sample sets of mussels out there right now to see how well they do so that we could get ready for a larger mussel reintroduction program. We are also exploring reintroducing sturgeon, which would be a really high quality fish that historically used the river into the river. So, you know, as a national park, one thing that we really focus on is high biological integrity, healthy ecosystems that can support native wildlife. So we're creating healthier ecosystems and bringing the wildlife in as well. So those are some highlights from Cuyahoga, and I'll send it on south to Dan.
Thank you so much, Jenny. And actually, Dave, you let me know if I've got any feedback there. Okay, good. You know, one of the themes, obviously, throughout our presentation this evening is how might we connect people to our landscape in some meaningful way. And, you know, you've heard us mention repeatedly that the foundation for our work is people on this Zoom call today. It's individuals, it's organizations. We could not fulfill our mission if it wasn't for all those partners that we work with. And like I said, it makes it more complicated because that means you have to somehow get everybody on the same page. And it does take a little bit longer time, but we believe it truly makes what the Ohio and Erie Canalway in Cuyahoga Valley National Park a much more sustainable project. Because we're not dependent upon one particular source of funding, it requires everybody to pitch in together to create this great regional resource for recreation, for economic development. And this is just an example, you know, of all the different partners that we work with on an annual basis. The next slide. And, you know, how we do this is really connecting people to the resource in some meaningful way. So some people are out there on the Topaz Trail because they want to just, they've had a bad day at work. They just want to clear their head. Some people are training for a marathon. Some people want to have that bucket list. They want to ride all 101 miles. They want to get a century ride in. But we don't care how people interact with the resource as long as they interact with it, because that's how we cultivate new sponsors. We cultivate new stewards. And so we're really proud that in some meaningful way, whether you're on a bicycle, you're walking, you're canoeing, you're attending one of our fishing derbies, you're connecting to the Ohio and Erie Canalway in some meaningful way. And we do this on an annual basis. We have canal cleanups. You know, we have corporations that adopt different sections of the trail. We believe that by cultivating new stewards for the Ohio and Erie Canalway and the Topaz Trail, we really truly are creating a legacy for future generations. And we're also working on some real signature projects. Mira mentioned some signature projects up in the Cleveland area. We're also doing the same thing in the southern end of the Ohio and Erie Canalway. And one of our signature projects is Lot 3 Park in downtown Akron. This is a bird's eye view of what this park project will look like going forward in the future. And what's really important about these images that you're going to see over the next few minutes here is that this represents a $10 million investment, primarily of local funding as well as private funding. Lot 3 Park is a great event and concert and festival.
Okay, we lost Dan's audio a little bit. He froze.
Maybe we can turn off his video and that might improve transmission.
Yep. Looks like he tried to do that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, we had a question earlier. I wanted to just jump in maybe while Dan's trying to get that reset. Just a basic question of how far east and northeast does the canal run? We have some folks, looks like from Buffalo, Rochester, right? So can anyone speak to that?
It's actually a different canal.
That's okay.
Yeah, so the Erie Canal, which is also a National Heritage Area, does go across the state of New York from Buffalo to the Hudson River Valley. I'm not exactly sure of its exact easternmost point. Jenny, you might know better. But they are connected in that we wouldn't have the Ohio and Erie Canal if we didn't have the Erie Canal. The workers who dug the Erie Canal came right to Cleveland and started work again with barely a break. So the Ohio and Erie Canal, Jenny mentioned the park's anniversary. We will have the 200th anniversary in 2025 of the work starting on the Ohio and Erie Canal. That same year, the Erie Canal in New York is going to celebrate the 200th anniversary of them finishing that canal. So it was, and New York paid for the canal. They put up the dollars and sent the workers, the expertise, and the same people who advocated for it in New York created it here in Ohio. They were looking to get their goods to market. And
yeah, great. There you go, Marianne. There's your answer to your question. And then one more in the chat feature. I think Jenny touched on this about how the canal can seem and appear dry at times. You mentioned the removal of those dams. I'm assuming that was answering. That's the question you were referencing, Jenny, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, I will just say there's one section of the canal that's watered. It's the northernmost section in the national park, starting at Station Road Bridge, basically, and then heading north from there. South of Station Road, there is not water in the canal unless it naturally occurred there. So, you know, the canal in some places have become wetlands. They're actually really enjoyable for looking for turtles, and, you know, they're nice birding locations. But the watered section where we're intentionally having water in the canal starts at Station Road Bridge Trailhead.
Great, thank you.
Dan's coming back in.
Yep.
Oh, well, we'll try again. He's having a tough time.
Yeah. Well, we are hopefully Dan can get reestablished here. We're approaching an hour. I would encourage anyone else who has questions, and thanks for those who post some questions in the chat feature, get those in now. And then we have a few that were pre-submitted that we'll try and get to here at the end. But Dan, are you with us? Here at the end. Yeah. Dan, are you with us?
Yeah. Yes, I am.
Yes, I am. All right, I think the audio is still echoing there, Dan. Sorry.
So if we don't get Dan back, I will, I'm not intimately up to date on the projects that they're working on, but I would really encourage you to take a look at Lock 3 and the work that they're doing to improve that area. And then especially the work that they're doing through Akron Civic Commons at Summit Lake. I see Dan popping in and out, but those, I know those are the two projects they're working, that Dan and his team are working the most on, and incredible outreach efforts into the community to, again, we've talked about connection. It's connecting the park to the urban areas, it's connecting people to history and to nature, and it's in some ways reconnecting neighborhoods and communities to resources that they might have been disconnected from because of industry or you know, a lot of other social issues.
Great.
Dan, are you there?
Dave, can you hear me?
Yeah, I think we can. Want to give it one more try?
Sorry about that.
There we go.
Sure. So I apologize. I'm not sure why I got dropped there, but I'm going to keep my video off if that's okay.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So as I was saying, you know, what we want to be able to do is have these signature park projects, because this is a shot of ultimately what Lock 3 Park will look like. You notice there's a lot more landscaping and trees. There's going to be a brand new performance pavilion. And this is right in the heart of the Ohio and Erie Canalway, right in the center of downtown Akron. And, you know, the project that we're working on is called Akron Civic Commons. And what we've learned over the years is that it's more than just connecting points A to B, that we really want to create these exceptional public spaces where everybody feels welcome, regardless of your race, your gender, your income, your education and experience. And unfortunately, in some of our park spaces, there's been a significant amount of disinvestment. And as these slides indicate here, you know, we want to create a space that's welcoming for everybody, because unfortunately, what we've learned really over the past couple of years with COVID is that, you know, we now more than ever, we need park spaces where people can go to rejuvenate, for relief. And so our parks, trails, and open spaces have become much more important, whereas in the past, they might have been considered non-essential services. Our parks, trails, and open spaces are truly considered essential services. And what's really exciting, as I said previously, these projects that I'm sharing with you are fully funded. They're under design right now. In Lock 3 Park, we'll actually have a groundbreaking this fall. The next couple of renderings are of Summit Lake. And this is a brand new park that's going to be developed right on the shores of Summit Lake. You see the canal there on the right-hand side. Still goes through Summit Lake. This provides a water source for the Ohio and Erie Canal. And again, this is fully funded. Unfortunately, Summit Lake is an area we talked about, you know, communities and neighborhoods that have been disinvested. It also has been a neighborhood that has been heavily polluted. Industry basically pumped water out of Summit Lake, and they pumped the dirty water back into Summit Lake. And fortunately, nature has really kind of revived it on its own, because now you have blue herons and kingfishers and ospreys at Summit Lake. And so really, it is really about equity and bringing, you know, valuable park spaces to neighborhoods, communities of color that quite frankly have not had a lot of investment over the years. And the next slide actually, I think, shows you a different rendering of Summit Lake. There'll be a trail all the way around the lake, a nice pavilion, a canoe and kayak share, because not everybody can necessarily afford to rent a canoe or kayak. but many people have canoes or kayaks, but they don't necessarily have places to store them. So we're going to provide free storage for anybody who'd like to have their canoe or kayak stored at Summit Lake. And we're in return, we're going to provide free access to canoes and kayaks to the residents of the Summit Lake neighborhood. You see the beautiful pavilion there, nice boardwalk, and really bring, make this to be a destination along the Ohio and Erie Canalway. And really working with our neighborhood residents, our goal really is to create a legacy for future generations. So that, I think, kind of wraps up those park projects, the 2 signature parks projects in the southern area. And we'd be happy to answer any questions that you folks have at this time.
Okay. Mike, ready to go to some questions then? Sound good?
Yes, sir. I'm putting a little note in the chat because of Bob's mention of Hooples, which is a wonderful spot to see this area and its connection to the Lake Link Trail to the Towpath Trail. So that's a great asset of Northeast Ohio too.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, let's take a look at some questions that were submitted ahead of time, if we could. Just taking a step back, why do you feel these areas have been so well utilized in our community? What's kind of the secret sauce there that has helped it all come together?
Well,
and I think a lot of it has been done with community participation, with community input. It's a community-based project. And so I think when you ask and get feedback from the people who will be using it, I think that is when you get a successful connection. Mike, did you have something?
Well, I was just going to point out all 3 organizations represented here have extensive volunteer networks that draw people onto the towpath or into the park. The National Park Service and the Conservancy team on volunteers. There's so many opportunities to volunteer and to get involved. And then on top of that, all 3 organizations are longtime members of the community, and they've established their constituencies, and it's helped to popularize the towpath and the park.
I think, Dave, the other advantage is that there's a real hunger out there for these type of resources, parks, trails, and open spaces. Mm-hmm. And people tell us all the time that when they go away from the area and they come back to Northeast Ohio, the first thing they tell us is how blessed and fortunate we are to have National Park Service. We have state parks. We have county parks. And, it's really being in response to the need. And I think we're really blessed to have that. We're part of the economic development package, and it's that regional connectivity. There are very few places in the country that I know of that have these type of regional trails and park systems of this exceptional quality.
Absolutely. All right. So another question, I believe, certainly Jenny touched on some struggles and some of the pardon our dust, pardon our progress line there spoke to this a little bit, but maybe across the board, what have been some of the struggles you have faced as you steward this aspect of our community in your different areas?
Well, I used to think that, go ahead, Jenny.
I was gonna say, I'll start off since you did the other one. There's so many in some ways. One is to broaden participation. I mean, they're really wonderful resources, and some segments of the community take a high degree of ownership and participation in it, and others not so much. We were established to bring parks to the people, to make parks accessible, but our visitation is much wider than the community. So that's something that's really important for us to overcome, and probably goes to the top of our list of our strategy, of our struggles.
Jenny, just to follow up for you, and then maybe we'll go around the horn. With the longstanding hope, demand to do something with the lakefront, Burke area, and whatnot, and just seems to never really have any traction there. I don't know if it's ever going to happen. Does part of you kind of say, "Hey, we're right over here. We have the green space, we have the bike trails. Come our way, just a little bit outside of downtown."
I think it's both and really.
Mhm.
I think it's really important that people have high quality parks very close to home
Mhm.
and that there's breadcrumbs of connections to the national park. So I don't see it as either or. I actually think it's very important to do both.
Got it. Okay, back to the question about any struggles that you've had stewarding these resources.
I think one of the struggles is patience. These are projects that have big visions behind them, and a lot of people involved. Dan talked about 200 public-private partnerships. That isn't on every project, thankfully, but to coordinate all those entities and to have all those voices in the room and to work together to solve things that seem unsolvable. I wasn't here at the time, but a lot of people tell me how they never thought the Towpath Trail would get north of Harvard. And so having that patience to keep pushing through, and it doesn't always look the way it's going to look when you first envision it. It changes over time, and that's okay too. So. Dan, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, Dave, I used to think that developing the trail was the biggest challenge. This is my 29th year with the organization, so a lot of the comments that Jenny and Mira have alluded to regarding perseverance and patience, and it's really a marathon, not a sprint, they all apply. And but lately, to be honest with you, one of our challenges is with a lot of the construction projects along the Ohio and Erie Canalway, and whether they be highway projects or sewer projects or Army Corps of Engineer projects, it's a challenge sometimes to keep the trail open. It's making sure that people understand that the trail is more than just a recreational resource, because for many people who don't have access to automobiles, the Ohio and Erie Canal Towpath Trail is how they get to work. It's how they get to school. It's how they get to the local library. And so I think it's really recognizing how the Ohio and Erie Canalway and the Towpath Trail are really part of our fabric of our community. And how can we keep this at a high quality and maintain this going into the future?
All right, one final question. That's kind of a two-parter. Would love to know, what made you fall in love with this work? And then for the audience, is there one hidden gem, an area or a program offered that you think everyone should take advantage of? Who wants to go first? Mike, why don't you go last, Mike? Okay. You'll close it down. Okay.
Yeah. I'll go first. What makes me love this work? So my job specifically, I'm the Chief of Interpretation, Education, and Visitor Services. So my job specifically is to connect people to the meaning and value of this place, to help people learn, to help people feel inspired by it. And I see so many people who get so deeply connected to this park by visiting all the time because it's close to home, by becoming deeply committed as a volunteer. And it just makes me realize how important this place is. And, providing something that's truly important to people that really makes their lives meaningful is where I get my joy.
Then do you have a hidden gem you'd like to recommend?
Oh, me? Oh, I thought
Yeah.
that was for the audience. A hidden gem. It's seasonal change. So going to the same place, wherever it is that you happen to love, over and over again, and watching the seasons change watching the cycle of flowers, the cycle of leaves. I really love it. I happen to live close to Station Road Bridge Trailhead. So that's where I go a lot. It's a really fun place to bird watch and watch the seasons unfold.
Wonderful. Mira, Dan?
Yeah, I mean, I would probably build on what Jenny alluded to, and that is that what motivates me and gets me up every day is that every time I see people out on the trail, whether it's somebody walking their dog, somebody pushing a baby stroller, maybe it's a runner, maybe it's a bicyclist, and that knowing that in some small way, we've, helped contribute to this incredible regional resource it's been here for almost 200 years. And if we do it right, and I think we are, it'll be here for another 200 years. And that's a pretty special thing. And the fact that it's, so many people came together to make it happen. Congressman Regula, I had the pleasure of knowing him and working with him. And he would often tell me that it's a quote, one of his favorite quotes was from President John F. Kennedy, that victory has 1,000 fathers and defeat is an orphan. And his other quote that I really liked was, he said, he would always say, Dan, you really never see a statue to a committee. And it really has taken over 1,000, fathers and mothers to really make this project successful. We're so blessed and fortunate that so many people have dedicated their lives to this regional resource. And it's just an incredible opportunity. I don't really consider what I do work. It's a labor of love. And your second question, Dave, is a little bit of a catch-22, because if I mention one special place, I'm going to offend the other one. So I really don't have any one special place. There's so many unique features to the Ohio and Erie Canalway. I like the urban areas. I like the rural areas. I love the national park. But one of my favorite things is to probably be by the water. I agree with Jenny, either seeing the fish in the Ohio and Erie Canal or watching the birds and the wildlife.
Wonderful. Thank you. Mira?
So I will kind of echo what Jenny and Dan said. I mean, it's incredibly fortunate to be able to do work that, long-term just makes your community a better place. And that will have an impact going forward. And you never know how many people that will touch. But if you can connect people to place and put meaning behind that, I just think that's something very special to be able to be a part of. And I also don't know that I would have a hidden gem. I would default a little bit to the newness of maybe a place like Camp Cleveland in the Tremont neighborhood that folks might not have visited. It's more of a passive reflective area, less of a let's put some miles on the trail area. And it truly is a neighborhood area to pause. And you can look out over the Industrial Valley and really see the intersections, between industrial and nature and recreation and community. So that's a great spot. I also like to sit at Hart Crane Park, right across the street from Hooples, or across the river from Hooples, sorry, and watch the freighters come in. Watching them make the turn and navigate the river, if you haven't had an opportunity to do that, it's an extraordinary feat. And I kind of get excited when I see the bridge up on Columbus, because that means something special is coming through.
When we were working down there, and that was in 1981, we opened up Hooples, and three of us, my two buddies and I, didn't have any jobs. It's got a nice little history to it, and saw this place, opened it up, brought our crowd in, and got, and the neighbors were happy because it wasn't just an eyesore, and the cops were there to have a Coca-Cola and not beat heads. So it was kind of nice. And so it was really good to be there and watch the whole area grow up, right around us. the bridge, the drawbridge right there you're talking about that goes up when the big American Republic goes through. It's just amazing. And you can see it right out our windows. You can watch this huge ship make this really tight turn right around there. And it's just really just fabulous. We've been doing that since 1981 and watching these ships go through. We fixed up the place quite a bit. If you get down there, go out and they'll have a little beverage and watch the ships go by. It's just fabulous. The whole area, Duck Island, that whole area around is just being developed up by Sokolowski's and all that. Just great views. We've got one of the best views of the fireworks when they shoot them off at the stadium. So it's just a great venue just to be down. I think within the last few years they put out a trail, a hiking trail up on the hill behind Hooples. You know, it goes up underneath the RTA. You know, the transit. So it's pretty interesting. Just to ride around through there, even if we get a chance to hike much. I was cruising there a few days ago just for fun, and it's just amazing what's going on there. And I thought I knew what was going on. So that's my 2 cents.
That's Bob LaRocca, everybody, from the class of 1973, one of our wonderful and passionate volunteers who I just learned from the chat feature, Bob, former owner of Hooples down there. So thank you for the comments. Mike, do you want to close it out here?
Yeah, I was 10, 15 years ago, I was fortunate to be asked to be a member of a group of business people and nonprofit executives from Cuyahoga and Summit counties to put together a fund called the Trails Forever Legacy Fund, which helped to create and maintain trails in the national park. And it has since been eclipsed by other fundraising efforts. But I also was involved in the fundraising for the Cuyahoga Valley Visitor Center that Jenny showed earlier. That was a reclaim of an old apartment building that now is a fabulous visitor center. The exploration center that Jenny showed, that was $1 million project that the Park Service did. And for my go-to place, I don't know, but I think my wife and I tend to go to Station Road Bridge more than any other place. But someone put in the chat, Boston to Peninsula, you can't beat that trail either.
Thank you, Mike. And that brings us to the end here. I want to again thank Dan, Jenny, Mira, Mike. Thank you so much for offering your time to our community tonight for this presentation. Judging by some of the comments in the chat feature, it was obviously well received. People are excited to get the bikes out of the garage and get the kayaks on top of the cars and head out and enjoy some of this amazing nature and landscape here in Northeast Ohio. And personally, as a native of Akron and someone who lives in the Cleveland area, I am thrilled to see all the development and what you all had in store for us tonight and what the future holds. So thank you all again for doing this. And thank you all for attending. Thank you for listening in. For more events like this and whether it be on Zoom or even in person throughout the summer on into the fall and beyond, please check out our website, jcu.edu/alumni, and go to the events calendar. Again, we like to bring these enrichment opportunities to our alumni, whether virtually or in person. So thank you all for listening along. Thank you to our panel, and onward on, John Carroll. Have a good night.